Ella Wong is an experienced project manager in user research and stakeholder engagement. As head of design and operation at Good Growth, she has led research projects related to the alt protein industry in China, as well as the animal advocacy movement in Asia. She is also in charge of the distribution of research insights and general operations. Prior to joining, she was involved in running a sustainability-related training programs for corporates and government bodies. She also has experience in UX research, design, and stakeholder management for a property developer. In her spare time, you can find her trying the latest plant proteins products around town. This workshop is titled Using Research to Understand Your Audience and Stakeholders, Research Methods and a Chinese Case Study. In this workshop, Ella will introduce research methods that are less presented in the community, open up ideas on how they might be applied to different contexts, and discuss the research methods that advocates can use to understand their audiences and stakeholders. Thank you so much, Ella. Over to you.
Hi, thank you everyone for attending this last workshop of the conference. Thank you for sticking out to the end. And thank you very much for Animal Alliance Asia for inviting us. So I'm just going to share my screen for the presentation. Okay, so everyone can see, make it full screen. Does it look all right? Yeah. Okay. So for this workshop, today we'll be discussing the importance of doing research to inform your work and strategy in advocating for animals, and also some of the methods that you can go about doing research. We do want to make this workshop as useful to you as possible, and so there will be a few interactive elements for your input, and we hope that everyone can join us in participating in the interactive elements and some of the discussions. So a quick intro about myself. I am Ella, head of projects and operations at Good Growth. So I'm in charge of the project management for the research, along with the internal operations and some of the communications as well for the organization. As mentioned, I love trying new plant-based meat products or plant-based milk products around town. And so if you know of any new ones, let me know, especially if they're in Asia. And you can find me at ella@goodgrowth.io over email. So a little bit about us, what we do at Good Growth. We are a market research consultancy for sustainable food systems in Asia. What exactly we do is we work with alternative protein companies, animal welfare nonprofits, and social impact funders to better understand their consumers. Sometimes they might want to enter a new market, especially in Asia, or prototype and test new products and programs. So I'll share a little bit more about our work in upcoming case studies. And also I wanted to take this opportunity to introduce quickly our lead researcher, Jia Ying. She's also on the call. She'll be helping out a little bit with the discussion and also potentially to answer some Q&As at the end. So before I go into the presentation, I really want to do a kind of warm up icebreaker activity with everyone. So if everyone, you can please go to this link. http tinyurl.com/AACA Sunday. I think the team will also share it in the chat. If you can just click into it. It is a link to a Google Jamboard, or you can use this QR code. Oh, sorry. Okay. Are most people on this board? Anyone having trouble getting into this Google Jamboard? Let's see. Yeah, so please click the link to the icebreaker as shared in the chat. Okay, great. I see some people already starting. So this is just a quick icebreaker. If you could please share what kind of research methods you have used before for your work. So someone has said one-to-one interviews. So for those who just joined us, you might not have seen this link. Please check your chat. The team has put in the tiny URL link for you to access this activity. And it's actually very important because our next question will be related to what discussion group you'll be in at the end. So we'll have a little discussion at the end. So I'll give everyone maybe 2 to 3 minutes. I see 4 answers right now. Surveys, interviews. Yep, the link is shared by Leah. Okay, great. Oh, sorry, I forgot to introduce. So you have to click on this sticky note, type in. Then you can move it around. So the sticky note is here. Okay, interesting. There are some interesting ones like population census. Okay, so I guess that would be like reading the population census. Cyber ethnography. Feedback survey. Survey is a very common one. Literature review, interviews. Okay, great. I think maybe we'll move on since I don't see any more new responses. So these are all definitely very good examples of research. We will share how we've used it previously, and also a few other resources that you can use in your work later on. So if everyone, if you can please click this arrow over here and go to the next page, that would be great. So that's the second icebreaker question. So we're on page 2 right now. Here, I would like everyone to please answer this question. If you could have any research topic or question answered that will help you make your work more effective, what would it be? So I've given an example here. Please write down your name in the beginning because if not, then we won't be able to group you into the right discussion group at the end of the presentation. So here's an example. For example, are consumers willing to pay more for cage-free eggs in my country? So let's say I do cage-free campaign work to persuade corporates. I would like to show them that consumers are willing to pay more. So this would be a kind of research question that I would really like answered in my country. So yes, if you could please take a few minutes, use these sticky notes here, type in your name and your question or a topic, click save. That would be great. Yep, there are no basic questions. I like that one about what Indonesians think about veganism. I think, especially in Asia, we found that there's just not much research that's been done, which is why we're having this session. So it's great that everyone is bringing these up, and we definitely want to continue all of these conversations after the session as well. Okay, maybe last minute. And I understand if some people are having trouble with the Google Jamboard, you can also put it in, if you don't mind, you can also put in the chat, just set it to everyone so that we can see it. Thank you, Joaquin. Very active in sharing your questions. Other people, you need to, we really want to group you into similar topics for a discussion at the end. So if you could please put in your questions last minute to do so. Okay, great. So thank you everyone for your participation. If in the meantime you have other, you can think of new questions, you can always go back to this board, put it in, or as I said, if you find it difficult to use the board, you can put it into the chat and just set it so everyone can see the message. Okay, so let me go back to the presentation. Okay. So while before we kind of dive into how exactly we want to do research or how we can do research, I wanted to first talk about why. Why is it important for you when you do animal advocacy? And why do you need research and data when you design your strategy or your campaigns? And that's because all of us care about impact. We care about the impact, which is the effect of a program, service, or intervention on the target population. And we care about how we're affecting the target audience that we're trying to change or influence their behavior. And so here I will give you some examples of how data and research can actually help make your impact higher and your strategy more effective. So here is another interactive element that I would love to invite everyone to take part in, which is I'll ask a question and you can tell me what you think is the better option or the strategy that you will choose. So the question here is, maybe a lot of you have done this before, is talking to restaurants and trying to get them to add more vegan options to the menu. So is it a more effective strategy to have a restaurant list vegan items together with other food items? So in the same sections like appetizer, in the same appetizer sections, main course sections, or to have a separate vegan section of the menu. So on the menu, it would say vegan options and then have all the different dishes. So which together or separate is the more effective strategy to get people to order more vegan dishes? So if I could please invite the tech team to pull up the poll. There'll be a poll on Zoom. And if everyone could just vote, it'll be quick and easy. Yep, you should see the poll question now. Should you list vegan options together or separate for more people to choose the vegan option? Oh, it's getting very close. I think we're going to have a little bit more answers on together, some separate. Okay, nice. So can everyone see the answers? Or I guess I have to click share. Oh, okay, share results, nice. Okay, so we see that about 70% of you said put it together in the same section of menu, and about 1/3 of you say separate. So studies have shown that indeed, a lot of you are correct. You should not put your vegetables in a corner. So you should actually, studies have shown that people are about 50% less likely to order veg dishes if you put them on a separate section of the menu. And a caveat though for this is it might be different in places like India. And so this survey is a more general kind of study on, I think a more Western audience on what would be better for them. But I think if we apply it to your country, you might want to do a similar study, or you might want to try this strategy and see if it works as well. Next question. So this is based on a study that we actually did ourselves in collaboration with phonetics, which I will share more in a later slide. It's based on a study where we conducted multiple focus groups across diverse demographics in China to understand their attitudes towards farm animal welfare and high welfare products. So this was a kind of surprising insight that we found from the study, and we wanted everyone to also kind of guess what the insight was. So the question would be, if you wanted to promote cage-free eggs in China, which demographic group would you look into targeting? So the poll question, please. So there are different demographic groups here. Which one do you think is likely to be more receptive to the idea of cage-free eggs? So you can make a guess based on your knowledge, understanding. Okay, last 5 seconds. Anyone else want to answer? Okay, great. If you could please share the results. Yep. So here, yeah, I think it's not surprising. A lot of you said university students, so kind of a younger audience, and also a higher income group. So that's definitely generally the assumption. But what we found that was interesting was actually grandparents had a lot of potential in their receptiveness in terms of higher welfare products. And I'll kind of go into why. So a lot of them, what we found at the focus groups is a lot of them lived in villages. They have memories of being in a village. They associated meat as better quality when they were younger, and where the animals were raised in kind of better environments that they thought were associated, that they could associate better environments with better meat quality. Also right now as a grandparent, they also care a lot about the quality of food. So they would have more time to compare across different products. So for example, one grandparent could name specific brands for different types of animals because they thought the quality was better. And we also found in another study that grandparents actually hold a lot of influence in the household in terms of what food the household consumes. Because a lot of them live with their children, with their grandchildren, and their preferences and dietary preferences would affect what the household buys as a whole, and what they eat together as a family. And lastly, and surprisingly to us as well, in terms of self-reported data on most willing to change their mindset about animal welfare after the focus group were actually the grandparents. Okay, so the last question I have for everyone is also based on the same study and also about Chinese consumers. Here, we want to launch an online campaign to talk about farm animal welfare in collaboration with an influencer. So what category of influencer or spokesperson would you work with to get your message across? Can you pull up the poll question, please? Thank you. So here are a few selections of usual spokespeople that you might engage to do an online campaign. Okay, great. If we can share the results. Thanks everyone for your active participation. Also as expected, I think a lot of you said singer, celebrity, kind of for their fame, well-known, well-knownness. Some people said farm company CEO, and then some of the other selections had fewer choices. So also, interestingly, we found in our research is When it comes to celebrities or famous influencers, there were quite a lot of concerns about their relevant experience and their knowledge of actually what farm animal welfare is. And also especially the incentives behind why they're conveying this message. So there were some kind of concerns or about that. And in terms of organization leaders, so that might be someone from a farm company or an NGO leader, they were actually generally trusted for their experience, although some people did also express concerns about their incentive. And the influencer groups that we found with high potential to look into is actually farmers and students. The former farmers is, as we described earlier, also because of their experience. So people tend to trust, they would know what they're saying when it comes to farm animal welfare. And for students, across the board, students were perceived well when they were featured in a video or when they were kind of sharing a campaign message. I think some feedback was that young people gave out a feeling of pureness and naivety that evoked feelings of empathy in the respondents. And I think some of the people in the mother group actually said that it kind of reminded them of the motherly relationship between the mother animal and the baby when they were hearing a younger person talk about this kind of messaging. So this is all to say that there are no absolutely correct answers, but you might want to sometimes rethink some of your assumptions and expand your way of thinking. And the way of doing this is to conduct research. So a reminder that that you are not your target audience, and some of your assumptions may be incorrect, or that your horizons could be expanded if you gathered enough data and information about your target audience, so that you're able to better, more effectively target and change and influence their behavior. So you might ask, okay, now I've understood the importance of research. How can I actually go about doing it? So here are some examples of research methods. I think some of you already gone into it. So I will just list out some examples, and they're not conclusive, but I think they're quite commonly used. So in terms of quantitative research, where you could gather quantitative data, obviously you can use surveys. They might be more expensive. There's also potential to do large-scale experiments with a control group, or another kind of less, more overlooked way is your own social media analytics. On the qualitative side, as many of you said, it's very easy to do interviews. So right now, especially post-COVID, virtual interviews are very common. Obviously, you can do face-to-face. Another scenario is in situ, so in the situation. So for example, you actually interview someone when they're in the store about to buy something, or after they've purchased something, or interview someone on a farm after they've done a farm visit. Other methods are focus groups, so a more efficient way of gathering, doing interview, but just with a few more people together, and diary studies. So diary studies, I will share more in our case study later as well. And of course, you can use a mixed method research. So we have done one on Chinese consumers, which I'll share more later. And also, obviously, there's desktop and literature review that you can do to understand what studies are already out there. So perhaps you don't need to duplicate your efforts. Okay, so let me go into a case study of one of the research that we've done on farm animal protection in China. So this is a two-part study. The first part, we interviewed advocates in China in the farm animal welfare space, so people like yourself, on the challenges and opportunities of farm animal advocacy in the country. In the second part, which consisted of 8 focus groups across different demographics, we focused on understanding what consumers thought about farm animal welfare through message testing and semi-structured discussions. Another purpose of this was also to test some of the advocate assumptions that we got from part 1 on what the consumers thought. And this is what we found. And also to caveat all this is not to say that the advocate assumptions were wrong, but we wanted to confirm some of them or to challenge or to expand some of what they thought of consumers or what kind of messaging would work in China. So for example, advocates reflected that or thought that meat reduction and animal welfare would be seen as a foreign concept in the country. What we found from the focus groups is these two topics were generally actually not associated with foreigners unless they were explicitly stated, let's say in a video, that this was a new idea from another country. So for example, when we introduced lobster welfare and it was a video about lobster welfare in a foreign country, then people would be like, oh, this might be a foreign concept, it might not apply to us. But prior to all that, when we talked about animal welfare in general, or it was a message from local campaigns, then people did not explicitly associate meat reduction, animal welfare with as a foreign concept. Secondly, attitudes to animals are based on how charismatic they are. So while this is still true, we found a bit more nuance to it, which was people considered their relationship, people would form attitudes to animals based on what they considered the relationship of the animal was with humans. So for example, a bee might not be conventionally seen as a charismatic animal, but when people talked about bees, they regarded them on a higher level because of the perceived service that they brought to humans. And so then they thought because of the service, then they should be treated better. They deserve higher animal welfare. So these were some of the interesting reflections we got from the focus groups. And lastly, a common assumption was also to target a younger audience and leverage the most popular celebrities. And as we've seen in the polls just now, while this is not wrong, it's also important to consider different demographic categories because sometimes you want your messaging to be more targeted and also to expand your horizons. So the implications for work for everyone here is that this research kind of confirmed and challenged some assumptions from both overseas and local advocates. And we also hope that this research would expand opportunity space in terms of what kind of messaging can be done or what kind of demographics should be targeted in terms of farm animal welfare in China. Next, this is another study that we did where we studied Chinese consumers' food consumption motivations, why they eat what they eat, and their experience and thoughts about modern plant-based meat products. So, you know, what we consider as like plant-based meat 2.0. The way we did this was, it was a mixed methods research. So we first did buddy focus groups of 10 groups, total of 30 people, and all from different dietary behaviors and different demographics. And the reason here we say buddy is because we understand that in China, it actually doesn't really work to just have a group of strangers come together and share. People would be shy and tend to not share. So we actually invited one person to invite their friends or family to join. Actually, it was, friends and colleagues to join the group. And we found that this would actually encourage people to share more openly about their thoughts and beliefs. Then after the focus group, we invited 15 of these individuals to do a diary study. So this is kind of interesting. So this is where we had the individuals take a photo of their of all the meals they ate in the week. We also asked them to go to a supermarket and try a plant-based meat and share some of their thoughts. But it was really interesting to see kind of the actual food that people ate and how it might differ from what you think people eat in the country. Or actually, sometimes also it might differ from what people would report in the survey, because self-reported and actual behavior, sometimes there is a gap. Then we had a collaborative an analysis process where we ran a workshop with people involved in the study and we put similar concepts together and created user personas. I'll show you in the next slide, which then we used to conduct a survey. So we surveyed, then we conducted a quantitative survey of 1,200 respondents to kind of confirm some of the personas that were created, whether they were actually can be reflected in the general population, and also what the general population diets looked like and their thoughts on plant-based meat. So here are the personas that we created based on the study. So I'm not going to go through all of these. I'll just give an example. For example, we spotted out a group of people called social foodies. So all of these personas are based on the motivations, or what we observed as their main motivator for eating. Like why would they choose to eat here or eat this? And for one group of people, we found that they were very much about social eating. So they like to share what they eat. They like to eat with their friends. They would also eat a lot of times based on recommendations from their friends. And so we created this persona based on the qualitative research on the focus groups and the diary studies. And then we also then created a survey based on that and found that about 1/3 of respondents actually identified with this kind of food motivator and could be categorized as this persona. So the implications of this work and how we hope it'll be useful is that we hope that research insights would be based on actual rather than just reported behaviors, as I mentioned earlier, and that by creating these different personas, plant-based meat companies or investors can have targeted strategy and differentiation when it comes to their marketing and messaging, rather than just promoting one message to everyone and trying to appeal to everyone all at once. Okay, so now that you've seen some examples of our work, how we applied research into insights, you might be asking or thinking, but we as a small organization or even as an individual might not have the time, resources, experience, or skills to do research. And so here is where I talk about how potentially you could still leverage research and data into your work. So here are some research resources that you might find useful. First of all, is leveraging existing research. So kind of the desktop research or literature review that I mentioned earlier. One really useful tool is the Phonetics Research Library. So Phonetics is one of the most established research organizations for animal advocacy. And they actually have 4,000 plus research studies across countries and topics in all over the world in their research library that you can search by keywords. So their topics actually cover all different kinds of animals. So from farm animal welfare to lab animals, wild animals, companion animals, etc. You can find in here. They also conduct pro bono office hours. So I noticed some of you had questions, for example, like how do I measure, the impact of my campaign? How do I know that people actually change their behavior afterwards? Or some of you might, when you're designing a campaign, think, oh, how do I find the relevant data? I can't find it in the library. You might want to leverage Phonetics pro bono office hours here. You can always email them directly if the office hour itself doesn't work for you. So I will send the PowerPoint to everyone after through Animal Alliance Asia to everyone. So these are all hyperlinked. So don't worry about trying to find the link. They're all linked here. And I can send you the PowerPoint afterwards. So there's also some other research libraries. So for example, the Humane League, Charity Entrepreneurship, Animal Charity Evaluators, they try and kind of collate a lot of different studies on animal advocacy and share it with all of you. So to actually get new research done, another method is to consider working with academics. So a lot of you might already do this for kind of more technical work, but you could actually also involve them for, let's say, like consumer research or understanding campaign strategies, for example. One interesting website is called Effective Thesis. So they're actually a platform that connects graduate or PhD students with effective research questions for their thesis. So that means you could actually leverage potentially leverage a master's student or PhD student's time to research a question that you would find useful for your work in your country. So check this out as well. Obviously, you can also work with research organizations like us at Good Growth, or there's also one called Animal Ask to create customized research. Obviously, it will involve costs, but there's also potential to apply for joint funding together. So if you're interested, feel free to reach out to us or to organizations like Animal Ask, and then we can kind of discuss more details. Or you can always just share your research ideas with us for open research. So a lot of times that we would, these organizations like us, Phonetics, we would do open research that is shared with everyone. And so if you have certain ideas and we find that actually a lot of advocates are interested, that might be a way to get your research done as well. One topic that we've been considering a lot is kind of replicating our Chinese consumer research, as you've seen earlier, the different personas in different countries. And hopefully how that could help advocates like you better target and understand different segments of your audience. So if that's interesting to you, let us know after this workshop. So other research resources also include, sorry, I don't know what happened. Oh, sorry, I clicked into it. Can everyone see this? Okay. Include leveraging skilled volunteering platforms. So I'm sure a lot of you already work with volunteers or volunteer yourself, but there are specific platforms that promote where people with certain professional skills sign up to volunteer their time to help animal advocacy orgs. So these people could be researchers, they could be UX designers, they could be product managers, for example, and you could try and engage them through these platforms. So one of them is Animal Advocacy Careers Skilled Volunteering Board, Vegan Hacktivists, and there's also one that's not animal specific, but I know of, it's called Time Auction. So you can check these out. And lastly, obviously, is you can start your own research and try and understand your audience by, these are just some of the ways, obviously there's a lot more. I think one obvious way is to track your campaigns via dynamic QR codes or links. So a lot of you, or some of you might not know where, let's say, how people got to your campaign, how people started donating. If you can start tracking them, that's actually a really good way of researching and understanding your audience and how you can reach more people like them. Another one you want to consider maybe is A/B testing email campaigns. So when you, let's say, launch a newsletter, you might want to test different headline messaging to see how, which kind of messaging is more effective. And actually, this goes hand in hand with these skilled volunteering platforms. So what you might want to do is you might want to start your own, these kind of like little tests and research, but then you want to engage someone who's more experienced. So let's say a product manager or a performance marketer to help you actually track and understand your online presence a lot more. And obviously, you could also do interviews and surveys with your target audience. So they might be donors, they might be your volunteers, or anyone else you need to work with. Okay, so that's actually the end of my presentation. Now we'll go into the discussion topic. Okay, so I think we'll leave questions at the end, if I'm not incorrect. We'll go into discussion topics first. The AACA team will divide you into groups based on kind of the topics that you shared. And for the next 10 minutes, it would be great if all of you can discuss these questions. So so the question would be, how would you go about doing research on the topic that you shared? Consider things like what methods would you use. So some of the methods I mentioned, whether qualitative, quantitative, mixed, desktop. How would you get funding? I think that's important because obviously with research, you need human resources to do it, and sometimes you actually do need funding, let's say, to do a survey. And also, who would you collaborate with? So are there any partners that you would need to collaborate with to get that research done, or would you be able to do it yourself? So if we could now take some time to get into our groups.
Yeah, sorry to
Yes.
interrupt. Oh, sorry, Elia. So we were trying to make the breakout rooms based on the topics, but the topics were too long. So we ended up just typing it in the chat. So if the participant could choose the research topic from the list in the chat, you can select which room to go into.
Do you have anything you wanted to add, Leah? Okay, great. So I kind of sneaked into different rooms to hear some of the discussions. Thank you, everyone, for your active sharing. I think there was a lot of interesting responses, especially on the funding and also thinking about partners to collaborate with. So thinking, someone said beyond, the vegan kind of animal advocacy groups. So maybe if I could invite someone from each group to share. I think there was no one in room 1, right? Am I right? Yeah, so maybe room 2. I know there were a few people there. Can you share some highlights of what you discussed?
Please feel free to raise your hand and we will unmute you.
Yeah, so the question for them, or they were talking about how to do research on the barriers and facilitators of going vegan. I think Joaquin is.
Yeah, there I am. Yeah, I actually the first question was like maybe one of the most difficult, because there are so many different ways to study and methodologies. And the question we asked, the second question, what are the barriers and facilitators of going vegan? It's also like a very broad for multiple kinds of people. So it would be interesting to know, like, in different, like, for old people, younger people, students, workers. So to know, like, what are the differences in the barriers in different kinds of people. So for that, maybe like a survey was like the most. I don't know. It's the first one that comes to our minds, but. Because it allows us to study like a large population, maybe more than like a focus group that is like smaller, but I don't know, maybe we are wrong. Well, then for the second question, the funding. It was also interesting to know that this question it's both interesting for activists, but also for companies that sell plant-based products. So, I was saying that usually activists don't have like a lot of economic power to fund things, but the vegan companies, the plant-based companies, maybe can give that economic support. And for the side of the activists, we can give like human resources and people doing the research and serving people. So in that way, we could both give something to the project and work together. And that also connects with the third question, like the collaborations. We could collaborate with the companies. Also, one of us said like maybe nutritionists and other professionals, and I think it's maybe important for analyzing the results and seeing, well, what are the fears of the people, if there are fears in the nutrition, fears, or maybe they don't have access to products. So with all of those results, we can then work with a group of like interdisciplinary professionals and activists to do something and help different groups to easier their problems or their barriers to become vegan.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much for your sharing. I definitely really like the idea of working with plant-based companies. I think one kind of another impact of research that all of you might want to consider also, besides directly using it for your work, is also kind of the indirect effects. So a lot of these companies might be interested to use the research to then create PR, create kind of media attention on like, oh, there's a lot of people interested in going vegan. Or they might use it to talk to investors to get more funding because they're like, well, look at all these people interested in vegan foods. So that's something to think about, why you want to do research or who you could collaborate with, for sure. And then a little bit on the methods, definitely agree. I think, I guess it's because it's such a broad question. If let's say we were to go into a new market, we don't know anything about people and their dietary habits. I think I would consider doing like a survey first of the population, as you said, and then after analyzing the results, there might be groups that you think has higher potential. Then you might want to do more in-depth qualitative studies on exactly what are their challenges, why they are eating what they eat, why they are not going vegan, or why they are going vegan, and then with that focus group, do more kind of qualitative research to get more in-depth insights for your campaigns. So that's one possibility as well, mixed methods. Great. I guess anyone else from the group want to share, or we can move on to the next group. I think room 3 had people in it, right? Maybe room 3, anyone?
Does anyone from room 3 want to speak? Please raise your hand. I think we
could always move on to group 4.
Yeah,
group 4. The question was, how do people perceive veganism and plant-based products? So what do they think about these products? I'm interested to share or type in the chat, kind of the highlights of what you shared.
Hello, everyone.
Thank you.
Oh, hi,
yes. Hi. Okay, so yeah, we talked about, so I was with Ajar, Fahar, and Alden, and we talked about how the people perceive veganism and plant-based products. So firstly, we decided for the method to first, like, through surveys to categorize the respondents. So we can do this through demographics like parents, children, and different ages, or also interesting the one Ella shared before about how the consumers perceive themselves, like the social foodies, the concerned parents, etc. And then afterwards, maybe tailor like how they're tailored advertisements to certain groups, and then focus more on like focus group discussions for certain groups you want to focus on more. And for the second, for funding, probably American or some UK organization. So some organizations we named back were Pro-Veg, Animal Improvement, and also some Asian vegan corporations and organizations that would be interested in doing this kind of consumer research. Because we all know there are quite a bunch of suppliers, ingredients, distributors that are focused now on plant-based or alternative proteins. But then for Asian, it's not as developed. So there might be a lot of corporations and organizations that would be interested in doing this kind of study. And for partnering, they raise a very interesting point, which we can partner with like Greens for Indonesia. So they're the leading vegan restaurant chain. And for Philippines, maybe the fast food chains, which are having plant-based alternatives now. So they might want to do consumer research, and we can do it easier with their like large area for consumers. So that's it for our group, but I'll also drop our summary for it.
Great. Thank you so much, Jana. Yeah, I think that was great insights on also mentioning, besides kind of existing plant-based like meats or product players, just kind of in general food companies, a lot of them are interested to know more about kind of healthy or vegan foods and what people think. So if you are able to do any kind of testing or research on that, that would be very useful for them, or they could be a potential partner or like source of funding for you to do that kind of research. And also thank you for mentioning some of the resources. So yes, there is quite a few of these funders, international funders that would fund research. So the ones that Gianna mentioned, there's also ones like Tiny Beam, Food Systems Research Fund. They specifically fund research as well. And then I guess lastly, also Gianna reminded me to like expand horizons is also to think beyond the food and vegan movement, also in like sustainability. So I think there's a lot of like sustainability funds or foundations. They might be interested in this kind of research. And if you can talk about, you know, how food relates to climate change, there's also, you know, another source of funding or partner that you could work with. Thank you so much. Group 4. And then I guess the last group, group 5.
Representatives from group 5, please raise your
Anyone?
hand. We can unmute you.
If not, you could also type in the chat, or we could also move on to Q&A or just kind of broad discussion. But thank you so much, everyone, for your discussion. I know everyone has been discussing in the groups. Oh, they quickly shared in chat earlier. Okay, great. Yeah, so group 3 talked about mixed methods, but the researchers might need to have skills for both qualitative and quantitative. Yes, but you could also work with different people. So there might be some researchers with more kind of data and analysis experience, and then some who are better at doing interviews, qualitative research, and they can kind of inform each other through kind of, we mentioned earlier, like a workshop where you come together to discuss the insights. And then also non-vegan companies, yeah, we said like Unilever might be interested in this kind of research too. Okay, great. So I guess maybe if that's okay, we can move on to Q&A or wrap up our session. If there are any questions, feel free to ask. My colleague Jiaying is online as well. Any questions?
Everyone, please feel free to type your questions or raise hand. Use your digital raise hand too, so that we can answer some of your questions. I don't see any questions in the chat.
That's okay. It is the last session of the conference. Yeah, any questions or comments, please feel free to share here, or you could also use the feedback form. Understand the team will send out. Oh, I think Maria has a question.
Hello, thank you very much
hello.
Hello, thank you very much for great discussion. I'm a PhD researcher myself, so I'm very much familiar with what you have presented.
Right.
I just wanted to ask you, since I'm not doing very much on a behavioral type of research, I'm doing more of kind of humanities and discourse analysis, political analysis, what is political, etc. Human ecology, political ecology, eco-criticism, etc. So I wanted to ask you, when you talk about behavioral type of research, what do you consider as a biased, or how do you get rid of the bias that you can come across during the research? And what is also considered as kind of, how to explain, that's my question. How with the consumers and their behavior and doing the plant-based type of selection, what is your, how you get rid of the bias that you might come across in your research? Thank you.
I guess, is there a specific kind of bias, do you mean? And like what kind of research are you referring to?
Just in general, behavioral type of research, when you have a particular sample and you do a research where you select type of survey or structured questionnaire, how do you get rid of the bias in your research, so that it's yeah, that's I
Okay.
hope you understand.
So maybe
now.
for a
All
survey.
right.
Okay. I think Jiaying actually, she's our lead researcher. She can share a bit on how do you overcome some of these
sure.
biases.
Thanks for the question. So I think maybe just a few thoughts. Definitely, like, bias is almost always inherent in doing human research. But I guess first, if we are talking about surveys, some things I might recommend are to ask questions about existing behaviors. So the main bias would be about memory, but rather than asking questions about like future behaviors. So would you buy this, or like this plant-based product or this vegan product? You're asking people to predict. And also there's a social desirability bias. So if it's like nicer or like better for you, or you feel better about saying yes, then maybe you're more likely to say yes. But if you ask for a recall, then it's more about the memory. Obviously, social desirability is still there, but it's more direct because it's based on the existing experiences. I guess another thing is in terms of, if you really want to understand behavior, then I generally would say like surveys are often like pretty bad at like looking at that, just because of all the things that you mentioned. Like I might want to do more kind of ethnographic research where I'm actually observing people's behaviors. We can do even like tests within purchase. For example, you can ask people about what they would buy if this packaging is better than this packaging, but their actual behavior in the supermarket might be very different. And we also may not actually know about all the different factors that they might consider, like the height that they are at, where their eyes are looking and where the product is. Maybe different colors mean different things in different cultures. So like certain colors might be more attractive in certain countries. And there's so much of this complexity. So I think often qualitative can be a nice entry point there to at least understand maybe some of the things that we don't know or we couldn't predict. Another way to kind of address that is also, I think, which is interesting, I think in all of the research, we didn't necessarily mention, so in the breakout rooms, we didn't mention literature reviews. So another way is also just to look at, well, what is the existing research that people have done, especially in other countries, because very likely the researchers have also experienced like different problems with bias, and maybe they have come up with different ways to address that. So those are some broad thoughts, but again, every specific situation might be a little bit different.
Thank you so much for that answer. We have one more question from Kaho. She said, you mentioned the advantage of doing a focus group in China with a group of people who are familiar with each other. What are the limitations of this, and how can we address these limitations?
I guess like there are several that are quite obvious, and I mean, Ella, feel free to jump in. The obvious one is that you're getting people that are very like potentially very similar. And I guess a lot of times, I think when you're doing research, especially with qualitative, where you have to work with smaller samples, it is going to be a trade-off, right? There's going to be a trade-off on costs. So how many people can you actually invite? There's going to be trade-offs on analysis. So even if you had a lot of money, because qualitative requires, you're basically collecting lots of transcript information, basically, right? Because you're asking those questions, you have these really long transcripts, and even if you just listen to the videos or the discussions, it might be an hour or 90 minutes. It's a lot of time and a lot of data. So there's a trade-off there. And then there's going to be a trade-off on kind of the quality of the participants or the diversity of the participants. So I guess like in this case, we decided that for our purposes, we wanted to get as much of like kind of candid responses as we could. I guess another thing with focus groups is we're in this case, especially, I guess we're not trying to understand the whole population or even like all of the different segments, right? Because we really just looked at certain demographics. There are plenty that we haven't looked at. And so what we wanted to do is kind of get authentic responses across just kind of broad groups. And then if we found any of those groups to be particularly promising, so for example, the grandparents, we can then look at something that is more generalizable. So what is the broader population of grandparents, maybe in different tier cities, maybe of different income groups, like, and then that there we can have the diversity, which we traded off for the kind of authenticity that is built on the social trust and relationships. Yeah. Yeah, I guess my bottom line is it's always going to be trade-offs.
Thank you so much. So one last question, that's what we have the time for. AIM asks, some findings of research are very worth sharing, but I'm struggling a bit on how to make the data accessible and digestible for public audiences. Do you have any general tips or principles on how to do that effectively?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's something we and also all research orgs are grappling with. I think especially those with like academic backgrounds, because academic papers are very difficult to access and understand. And so the way I guess share our experience we've done it is we try and make things very visual, as you see in our just like that one slide in our persona report. Try and make things a lot more visual with diagrams, big numbers, charts, for example. It does take a lot of time to think about how do you translate the information into, let's say, a chart or a photo. But I think it's definitely worth it. And then you can also share it easily, bits and pieces on your social media. And then I think another way is to think about your target audience. So is this something you actually need to share with everyone publicly? Like, is everyone going to use it? If not, if you're, let's say you're targeting a plant-based or targeting plant-based companies, which part of your research would they care most about? Then I would make just a one-pager. and not have everything in one report. So I'm definitely very pro not writing very long reports. Another way we've tried is also to, sorry, I forgot the word. We wrote a report, but then we put the highlights onto the website into little chunks and pieces. So it's more accessible for someone when they just go onto the website, they can see the highlights, and if they want details, they can go into the report. So we've tried that as well. And if anyone else has thoughts, suggestions, feel free to share.
Thank you. Those are so helpful.
Yeah.
And thank you. This brings us to the end of the session.
Nice.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
I learned so much because I'm not someone who knows a lot about research, so it was a very eye-opening session for me, and I'm sure everyone else here also found a lot of new information to work on.